legislator, thinking on a larger scale, we could do things such as mass transit. I would be a strong proponent of developing that. Commuter bicycle trails, where possible. I'm finding a big demand for that. I'm doing my canvassing on bicycle, and so I'm getting a lot of comments about that. And thanks for doing it. People appreciate that. But I think there could be a role for bicycle trails. If safe trails were built, I believe people would definitely use them. When the wet weather permits. Smart growth, workforce housing, I think is incredibly important. Promotion of green technologies, and at a very fundamental level, conservation. That can't be forgotten. And Connecticut has extremely high, I believe the highest electricity costs in the continental United States. And I think we need innovative solutions to finding not only affordable but sustainable energy to power Connecticut's future. And there's the new green economy is right on the horizon, and I think that we have to start exploring those options, and that will create, it's a new economy, new green collar businesses they're calling it, and that would create quality jobs for Connecticut workers, and then we'd have citizens, businesses, governments, industry, they all benefit from lower energy costs and improved environmental quality.
It seems like such a no-brainer. I mean,
yeah.
to start thinking about that sort of thing. I mean, we have so many areas in Connecticut that were dependent on manufacturing jobs and things like that. And what if Connecticut became a manufacturing center for green technology in some cases?
Exactly.
The labor seems to be there, the skill seems to be there.
Yes.
It just seems like that something is not pushing it that
Yep.
way.
It has to be. We have to have some types of initiatives to move it in that direction.
Right. Well, let's talk about education for a bit. It's always a big topic for elections. And what are your thoughts on education for the state of Connecticut?
Well, as most people agree, we want a good quality education for our children, and they need to be competitive in this this new global economy. But I believe that a good education, and I think most people agree with me, it means more than teaching to a test. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now. I would support measures that foster critical thinking skills and prepare students with important life skills, such as financial literacy. One thing I would promote, and many schools are having that now. They're offering, financial, literacy courses in the high schools, and I think that should be mandatory for all students. I think a lot of these, and critical thinking can be done through, like one example, humane education is a great way to teach critical thinking. And this can be done through public-private partnerships that would provide a low-cost or no-cost measure to implementing these. It wouldn't cost the municipalities anything to do this. For example, like pulling in nonprofits or people from the private sector to talk about these issues. Like, for example, for financial literacy courses, have a local banker come in and talk to the kids about financial literacy. And this also has the benefit of increasing community cohesiveness. So I think that's very important. I would advocate for increasing anti-bullying programs. I think that schools are important for our children's futures, not only for them, but also for the health of our communities, because I think they also have a role in teaching kids to be responsible citizens.
It seems like that's one of the things that's been lost in the focus on the testing is the sort of those other skills beyond that as well. If you're just tuning in, this is Radioactive, and this week I'm talking with Annie Hornish, who is the co-founder of the Compassionate Living Project, who is also running for state representative in Connecticut's 62nd District, representing Granby, New Hartford, parts of East Granby, and Barkhamsted. We're talking about her platform. We just talked a little bit about education, and we're going to move on to talk a little bit about healthcare. So, Annie, why don't you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on healthcare, and, again, what might you do as a member of the Connecticut General Assembly on this issue?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. I feel like good public health is in everyone's best interest, and I think most people can agree with that. Preventive health care costs less for both individuals and our society as a whole, and it provides a healthier, more productive workforce for individuals and for employers. I would support reducing Connecticut's rising health care costs through programs that focus on disease prevention and the promotion of healthier lifestyles. And this would include healthy lunch options in schools, or innovative initiatives like I had mentioned before, commuter bicycle trails. I'm a strong proponent of those. Things that encourage people to think in more healthful lines. And then, again, initiatives for people who take care of themselves, perhaps by joining health clubs, things like that. And I strongly believe in reforming our healthcare delivery system to ensure that healthcare is accessible for everyone.
Do you get a sense, in thinking about these issues, why so much of the discussion is not focused on prevention and preventative health care?
I'm not quite sure why, and maybe there is information out there for those who want to search for it. But I think that we need to make a more vigorous effort. I know in the schools a lot of if simply, some of the food options are terrible, high sugar, high fat. And I think there's some simple steps we can do. I don't quite know why. We are in a fast food culture. Mm-hmm. People want those types of foods. They're happier with them. Short term, it brings pleasure. Long term, it compromises health. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not sure exactly why the government hasn't taken a more active role yet in that. But I would definitely support those measures.
One of the other issues we talked about off mic before we got going with the interview was property taxes. And, well, elaborate on that. What is the issue as you see it with property taxes?
When I've been knocking on doors, I've met a lot of seniors who are, many of whom have spent their lives in their homes, who are rightfully concerned about being taxed out of their homes. And they're on fixed incomes. And I think that this calls for property tax reform, but it also calls for more than that. We need to lower operating costs for municipalities, and I think this has to call for creative and fresh ideas in order to do that. Such as regionalization of certain services or consolidation of services. Property taxes are based on two things: your home's value and the mill rate of the town. And we don't want, most people do not want their home's value to go down. So the only other way is we have to find ways to lower the town's operating costs, and hence the mill rate. Mm-hmm. And there's ways we can do this. I think the creative ways, when I talk about creative ways, I'm talking about always environmentally sensitive ways, mm-hmm. Such as, for example, helping to convert town buildings to run on solar power, mm-hmm. or schools to run on solar power where possible. As a representative, I would also work to get money from the state to support projects in the town that would otherwise be paid for by property taxes, and change the way that education is funded at the state level. Most of the property taxes go towards education. Roughly 80% per town is what I'm finding, ballpark, but it mostly goes to education, and part of that is subsidized by the state. And if we reform our property tax system, that can help provide relief especially relief to seniors and those on fixed incomes.
One of the interesting things I noticed as you're talking about your platform and the different issues that you're bringing up is how they really intermesh with each other. Yeah. In other words, the property tax issue seems to me that if we're encouraging our governments to be more environmentally conscious and energy conscious, that actually brings down costs, which then can alleviate the property tax burden on some people, and encouraging children to learn more about conservation and these sorts of things in our schools then leads to more awareness of the next generation, which stands to then propagate this whole mentality about conservation and environmentally friendly practices.
Absolutely.
Was this a conscious thing, or did this just sort of come out organically, or just sort of happen?
My thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Oh, it just came out. It just makes sense to me. And that kind of ties in with the critical thinking, humane education too. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a very holistic view of issues in the world around you, mm-hmm. and I think that's I think it's a necessary way that we need. I think we need to start thinking in those terms. It's simply for the planet. Mm-hmm. We have to start thinking more holistically and more with environmental sensitivity.